In this video, the Nordic ski waxing stand, Ski Wax-O-Matic, gets a new method for attaching the ski to the stand. Up until now, attaching a ski to the Ski Wax-O-Matic ski waxing stand meant taking your ski, using the binding on the ski to attach it to a steel bar. Something like that. The problem with that is that it turns out the steel bar that's on the toe of your ski boot can be different sizes. If we take this one and take a caliper and we measure it, it comes out to be 4 millimeters. Reading on the interweb tells me that there are also some that are 5 millimeters. There might be different sizes as well. I don't know. I'm not an expert on ski bindings. But anyway, it got me thinking that maybe what I needed to do is be like the fancy commercial ski waxing stands where they have a clamp that can clamp onto the sides of the ski rather than using the binding. So to do that, my first thought was, well, I need a vise where the two sides move in and out. That's actually fairly complicated to make. So I thought, well, what if we hinge the bottom, have two arms that kind of move out like that? The problem with that, if they're hinged at the bottom, it means the angle of the face where it meets the ski is changing depending on the width of your ski. That's a problem because you want a nice tight fit. So it means that whatever the piece that meets the ski has to sit flat against the ski. So its angle has to be able to change all the time. So I started off with this. I made an arm, cut a groove into it using a hole saw, and then I made a cylinder using the hole saw as well, and conveniently it fits in there. So that actually works fairly well from the perspective that if you've got the arm and it changes angles, moves in and out, the cylinder can rotate forward and back so that the face is always going to be able to adjust to whatever it's clamping onto. That's great, except that of course that falls out pretty easily. To get around that, because there's a hole right through the center from the hole saw, I could go ahead and put some arms on it, and that would allow it to attach on, if I glued those to the sides or something, so that would work. But it's a little bit awkward, a little bit clumsy, and kind of a lot of work. So I thought, well, in order to deal with the fact that the cylinder could fall out, I did more, rather than doing just a half circle like we had on this version. Now we have about 2/3 of a circle. So that allows this to slide in, which is great. So now it can move up and down. It can't get pulled out the front, but of course it can still slide out the ends. To deal with that, I cut a slot all the way through the cylinder. Well, not quite all the way through, but 80% of the way through. And then drilled a hole through the frame. When you put a nail down the hole, now it can't fall out the sides, and when it rotates up and down, it's limited in how far it can move because the nail stops it from turning too far. So that actually worked pretty well. The problem I ran into, though, is when you put a ski in between them and clamp it in, the ski is pretty far down, and you end up with the top of the arm sticking up too high. So your scraper is going to run into those when you try to scrape. So that was a problem. So I did another version. This one's using a couple of hinges from a 1957 kitchen cabinet doors, I think. And I followed the similar approach in that I used the circle, the hole saw, to drill through the arm. And I didn't have to go all the way through, so I stopped part way. And then I closed off the side with another piece of wood, so it keeps it from coming out, which is great. And you don't have to worry about it rotating too far because it can only go as far as the frame allows it to go. So that's working reasonably well. However, it has the same problem as the last version, where if I put a ski on top of it, and you can see if I try to run a scraper, it's going to run into the arms. So that's not working out so well. To get around that, I figured I could do two things. I probably need to make these shorter so the arms don't come around all the way on top of the cylinders. And if I make the cylinders bigger, then when I cut square off the face, there won't be as much of the cylinder left over top. So that came up to the next version, which is this one. And you can see, if you look at the close-up, the arm doesn't come all the way up, so it's actually, if you look closely, you can see it's basically a little bit lower than the top of the cylinder. So the flat face in the cylinder is pretty close to the top of the arm. and the larger cylinders are going to give us a bigger surface area for clamping onto the ski. So we'll try that out first of all and see how that works out. And you can see if we put a ski in here and tighten it up, it works out pretty well. If I put the scraper across, it can go all the way across and it's not going to run into the arms. So that's actually working pretty well. Fairly happy with how that works. The thing about this is I did a couple things on here that are interesting. First of all, the knob on the side. I decided rather than using the traditional plastic knob that I've been using that I get at various wood supply stores, I just took a piece of scrap wood, drilled a hole all the way through it, then drilled a slightly larger hole through the other side and squared it off using a chisel, so that essentially I was doing the same thing as what I do on the side here, where I've used a chisel to make a hole that exactly fits the head of the bolt in this case. It's maple, so it holds quite firmly there. So that allows me to tighten up from this side and not have it move from on the other side. So after I had drilled through, then I embedded a nut in the other side, and then I put another piece of wood with a hole drilled through the center so that it would give me a little bit of a standoff when I'm turning it on the axle, on the bolt. A couple other things about this. On the bottom, you can see it's designed so it can thread onto another bolt. So in the Ski Wax-O-Matic ski stand, there's a bolt that comes up through the center, which normally is what this sits on. But in this case, rather than having that sit on it, this will actually screw onto that bolt, and the threads allow you to adjust the height of where the clamp sits. So that works out fairly well. If you're not familiar with that little bit on the bottom, so this is the little gadget that's on the bottom. You see there are 4 spikes around the edge of it, and inside it's threaded. So that's what can sit on top of the bolt. And basically you take this, you drill a hole that matches that diameter, and then you just hammer this into it. So this is working pretty well. But there are a fair number of moving parts. Oh, and I didn't even talk about one of the more complicated parts of this. So what I ran into when I first tried this is when I mounted the ski in here, I had it on the waxing stand. When I put pressure on the tip, it caused pressure here to go up. In doing that, because these were free to move, they could turn all the way up, and with a bit of pressure, the ski actually pulled right out of there. So it basically went straight up. So what I need to do is restrict that motion so that they can't go all the way, turn all the way up. To do that, I drilled a 1/4 inch hole into the face of the curve on the inside of the arm. Then I drilled an 1/8 inch hole into the cylinder and put a small piece of doweling into that. What that does is that as you turn the face, as you turn the cylinder, the doweling is lined up in that little hole, in that 1/4 inch hole. So it moves up to the top of the 1/4 inch hole and then down to the bottom of the 1/4 inch hole. I drilled that hole with a Forstner bit, so it's a nice flat bottom, so the doweling can move cleanly from top to bottom. So this one's working fairly well. I like how it clamps onto the ski. It works reasonably well. The one thing I'm not crazy about is the bolt in the center. As you can see, what it means is the angle that this can adjust to on this side, it's a little more limited because basically the way the bolt is holding it. Whereas the one on the other side has quite a bit more freedom to move. So I thought it would be nice if both of the sides could move back and forth the same. I also wanted something to might be a little simpler to assemble, simpler to build. So I came up with this plan. So essentially now we've got rounded faces here. So the rounded faces are what's going to pull against the sides of the ski. So no matter what angle they're on, you're still hitting sort of part of a curve, so that should work out. And then I made a change to the axle, or to the bolt that's going through the middle. I'm using something called a desk bolt. So a desk bolt is a cylinder with a hole through it that's been threaded, and that allows you to put a threaded rod through it. And the cool thing there is that when it's in a hole, it allows you to, you've got some freedom there to move up and down. So it's a little more flexible. So the way it works here with this piece, you can see we've drilled a hole, and you just drop that bolt into the hole, and then you line up the hole with the hole in the body at the front there, and the threaded rod goes through and joins into it. So with this one, it works fairly well as well, but it does have some drawbacks. So I can go ahead, I can mount the ski in there, and it holds it fairly firmly. And if you get it right here, then the scraper shouldn't hit. Now I got it tapered down there a little bit, so I was actually hitting the edge with the scraper. If I get it right, then a scraper should be able to clearly go over the arms without getting stuck. So that's really nice. But it is a little bit fidgety, and I did find that this is maybe a little hard to see on the camera, but maybe you can see it on this one. You can see that the arms are really right at the bottom of the ski, so they're not actually contacting with a lot of the ski. So I'm worried that it's not really as good a hold and as tight a hold as I'd like it to be. So the short story is, I'm going to stick with this as the clamp. I might switch over to the desk bolt for tightening up the middle. I'm going to stick with the wooden handle because I really like it compared to the plastic handle. And yeah, I think that's a good alternative clamping solution rather than having to clamp onto an unknown diameter of steel bar. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I don't make too many of them, so it's not going to clog up your stream. I did notice we had a few snowflakes coming down for the first time this year, so ski season's not too far away. Enjoy your skiing, enjoy your ski waxing, and have a great winter. Thanks for watching.